What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at the Manchester City matchup versus Liverpool in the FA Cup semi-final. We're going to be looking at how Liverpool dominated the entire match, although it was a close scoreline at the end. So now to start, be sure to check out the OneFootball app. There's a link in the description below. They're sponsoring today's video. It's an app out there for all things football. It's a must-have for anyone who stays up to date with the latest games, biggest teams, and leagues all across the world. So it's an app I use to stay up to date, all those things to make these videos for you guys and to support the channel. It would be a huge help if you guys could download the app, benefit from it, and use the link in the description below. Now let's get right into the tactics behind the match. So Manchester City started building from the back in the first half, which gave them a lot of trouble because of Liverpool's press and their general setup. So let's look how it occurred. So in possession, we had Zack Steffen in goal, who's not nearly as comfortable on the ball as Ederson is and led to one of the goals. But generally the build-up saw Steffen being split by the two central defenders, and then we have our double pivot, Bernardo Silva and Fernandinho. Now the key tendency between these two players was to have Bernardo Silva drop deeper and get on the ball in front of Liverpool's high block, or at times we would often see Fernandinho as well. But it was more common for Bernardo Silva to do this, but I thought they were more effective by maintaining their double pivot and staying higher and behind the first line of pressure of Liverpool's front three that consisted of Mo Salah, Sadio Mane, and Diaz. Then we would see Trent Alexander-Arnold jump to the fullback of Manchester City, defending with numerical equality at the back, and the same tendency again from Thiago or Keita to jump between the half spaces and close down the double pivot or one of the two double pivot that Sadio Mane's cover shadow can't reach, to then block access higher upfield. But with a two holding midfielder system, they would then have more passing options from their first line of build-up into these central areas to try and exploit the lack of quickness from Thiago's jumping to then press Bernardo Silva. But because of the limited ability they had to find these players because of individual quality on the ball, it's understandable why Bernardo Silva would drop deeper and get the ball in front of the block, try and then be active in the build-up. So now we have an example of when Bernardo Silva drops along Ederson in Manchester City's build-up. This leaves Fernandinho as a single pivot, and it gives Liverpool one more player to go and press in Manchester City's first line. But with the main point of reference for Manchester City's press is the use of Sadio Mane's cover shadow, it's not so much of an issue that there's another player. And because of the lack of use of Zack Steffen in the build-up, it gives them actually an easier time now to go and pressure Manchester City, because now Mane will only have to take out Fernandinho in the cover shadow when he presses. Or it gives the wide players of Liverpool easier time pressing the central defenders because they're closer to the fullbacks, as we see here. Cancelo, because of the added player in their first line of build-up, puts the central defenders closer to the fullbacks. Now in the midfield third, we have our two central defenders being split by Fernandinho, as they did in a few situations. That left now Bernardo Silva as a single pivot, and the interactions between Bernardo Silva and Fernandinho was very common for two central midfielders in the holding midfield position. Liverpool then played a very high line. We see the first line of pressure for them set to go and press the Manchester City back line, but with Naby Keita through the half space and Thiago and Fabinho operating deeper, more as a double pivot, we see some tendencies of Naby Keita to go and jump into the half space, using his cover shadow to block access between the lines, whereas Mo Salah will be oriented towards Zinchenko, and the Manchester City fullbacks are taken care of by the wingers of Liverpool. And by having Naby Keita in an attacking midfield position, it gives Liverpool more options to go and press and higher intensity when they do jump. Now we'll look at an example with Bernardo Silva dropping deeper in the left half space, changing the reference point of Sadio Mane as the number 9, using his cover shadow to block access to the holding midfielder. This then allows Fernandinho to have more space and get an easier time to make himself the free player. And now in this example, we see Thiago as the player jumping to then create access to the second holding midfielder, Fernandinho, to then adequately press from a Liverpool perspective. We often had then Sterling, and then on the weak side, Phil Foden between the lines as ways to go and break the Liverpool press. But because this jumping of Thiago wasn't able to be exploited as easily as in the first match last week between these two sides in the Premier League, Manchester City didn't create much going forward. Now, Manchester City in their high block played with a back four that saw Zinchenko jump into the midfield and saw Manchester City use dual roles and numerical equality to defend at the back, with Nathan Ake dropping deeper into the wide area to then control the wingers of Liverpool. Manchester City front two prioritized access to the central defenders, and this forced then Bernardo Silva, one of the two holding midfielders, to go and jump to Fabinho, who was then deeper in Liverpool's normal build-up, with then players like Thiago, Mane, and Naby Keita between the lines. From here, Liverpool built with wide fullbacks as they did, and they attacked through most of the game with wide fullbacks, and Mo Salah varying his role within the team, sometimes staying wider and sometimes going more narrow, with then Mane performing the role of a false nine. And this allowed then Diaz to operate as a typical winger in this Liverpool side and allowed them to have good options going forward and progress the ball. Also, with the first two players in Manchester City's pressure being responsible for the central defenders, it forced Bernardo Silva to jump a long way, often leaving a lot of space between the lines if the wide midfielders of Manchester City didn't invert and stay connected with Fernandinho. Now, in the midfield third and going forward, Liverpool played typically with a double pivot, Thiago dropping deeper alongside Fabinho and connecting Naby Keita in the right half space, and oftentimes Sadio Mane in the left half space from their first line to their third line of build-up. Because of the lead Liverpool gained so early, it allowed the fullbacks to stay relatively deeper, allowing them to transition much easier into their back four. Also, with Thiago positioning himself much deeper and more narrow alongside Fabinho, it protected him from having to transition over a large amount of space and protected Liverpool's back line as well, securing them in circulation and in transitions. Also forced the Manchester City team to jump, leaving space often for Naby Keita to move in the blind side of these Manchester City midfielders. Now, Manchester City, when they entered the midfield third, Fernandinho and Bernardo Silva played alongside each other in a 4-4-2, which Manchester City usually did throughout most of the season. The big change for Manchester City was how they pressed higher up the field, often saw the two strikers responsible for the single pivot of Liverpool in their first third of build-up. And this is where we're going to wrap up the analysis. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.